Time for the royal speech. The 13th of March 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you again for the speech inspired by the new circumstances of life. Even worse. The critical situation made me decide for this speech rather than silence. I shall start with a presentation of the thinking behind my academy. Proceed to overview my findings in the investigation concerning my own case and humankind, and wind up with my analysis model for the investigation of this morning's catastrophe. I have presented my academy in a few ways, from a selection of viewpoints, which usually change depending on the principal's audience or viewer. The one I shall talk about now dates back to the 25th of January 2020. The idea was to pinpoint the key characteristics. The purpose of the Honestian Academy is to prevent and counteract indoctrination and ideologization. The ideal vision of the graduate being a person of cognitive independence. Naturally, spiritual independence is presupposed as a private life factor. A person of cognitive independence is free from whatsoever indoctrination and ideologization. Indoctrination proof, ideologization proof, immune. I shall follow with a round from one faculty to another. The first and most important one is the Faculty of Fine Literature and Arts. The guiding idea is spiritual self-expression, the key concept realities. It defines the ontology. A human being is a spiritual being that expresses himself or herself through literature and fine arts, and does so from his or her own idiosyncratic reality in the context of other realities, where reality is all that has found a place in the spirit's world, including the spirit's ideas or perceptions concerning the very individual spirit, and the spirit's elaborations on these, whether intelligible or not. For instance, an experience of a word just read goes beyond the definition and other knowledge of the lexicon item. Most of it subconscious, far more complex than the sum of life experiences, collected as pictures or movies that the world opens directly. Take the word intelligible. Do you consider Coleridge in Frost at Midnight and transhumanist pioneer, who placed the relation between a child, their child, and God in the realm of intellect revealed to the child by means of nature, which the child perceives and locates in the applicable areas of his or her brain, so that it would undergo a series of informative computations, after which the child can delight in the supreme genius of God? I do not. I follow the man of feeling, aware of higher states of existence of which he has been deprived due to the particular circumstances of his life, of which nonetheless he has remained aware, or to which his spirit has woken up in the course of his life, thanks to his individual qualities as a person sensitive to life, sensible in nature. and that we can learn from his poetry, the unique experience. The guiding idea for the Faculty of Superb Education is the Honestian paradigm. The key concept: take the spectacles or the glasses off. The Honestian paradigm specifies 15 defining assumptions. 1. The metaphor of glasses or spectacles. The glasses or spectacles through which we view life or worlds influence our perceptions and limit the truth we can arrive at or twist it, even when the purpose of the viewer is to arrive at the truth. That leaves aside all corrupted intentions, where the purpose is different. For instance, a creation of the untruth, either evil or well meant. The glasses or spectacles stand for existing. The glasses or spectacles stand for existing systems of knowledge, organized as cognitive frameworks. For example, cognitivism, behaviorism, the humanistic approach in psychology. The same situation viewed by an adept of each of these schools would present itself differently to the respective viewers. The perceptions affected by what the viewer is supposed to look for, or has his or her attention focused on, thanks to this or that specific school. It also concerns Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists, each representing a specific order of ontology and its manifestations in the life we all face. I believe it is possible to take the glasses off. Still, I do not have the method yet. Normally, in the course of life, we tend to move from one school to another, each new one claiming the realm of the truth. As a starting point, I take the rising awareness of the existence of such glasses in our cognitive pursuits. They need to be identified so that we would know where we view things through the lens of a system. It leads to pinpointing the system's workings in our cognitive life. In consequence, we can differentiate between the system and life, or the systemic truth in inverted commas, and the truth. 2. The metaphor of prisms. In the essence, it is about the cognitive situation similar to the one outlined above, but it shifts the focus from the framework, a system, to the person's individual experience acquired in real life. I attended the primary school in Krakow, which was named after Marshal Ivan Koń. What does it imply as far as my learning environment goes? I received the Roman Catholic religious education and upbringing. What does it imply as far as my perception of life goes? I have read Shakespeare, Polish romantics, the Lake poets, but also 1984, Memoirs of the Survivor, Lord of the Flies, and the deception point to crown it all. Not to mention the bond series in the primary school. What have these done to my attention focus when confronted with life? I was watching James Bond, Mission Impossible and La Femme Nikita series. How about the impact on my overall sensibility? I have spent hours listening to Baroque music. How does it relate to my presupposed order of the world and my perception of departures from it? I had been loved, and so on. These create prisons. What do I see if my attention is thus directed? How do I assess situations from the world, this world? How do I act in life if professionally I have been a teacher, an English teacher and a philologist, to be specific? What questions will I ask and which never surface in my mind? 3. The Matryoshka metaphor of perception. Once we get familiar with the Honestian thinking in terms of glasses and prisms, you can see that the journey started with the determination to arrive at the truth, goes through a series of untruths that need to be identified and recognized as untruths. To put it simply, glasses and prisms are packs or packages of convictions that guide our perception. They guide our thinking of the perceived cause. But the problem starts earlier. They guide our perceptions. Confronted with a situation we tend to perceive out of our reality through their glasses, by their prisms. In each case, a system of convictions rooted in a school of knowledge is more or less important personally. So the many are present in each person's life, but in an order. Something creating the center, something creates the center, excuse me, problems with producing speech. Something creates the center. Some remain less immediate, but still central. Some have created margins. And this is what the metaphor of Matryoshka is about. For instance, I have no doubt there is God, the center. I believe Jesus was God, but I also believe God was present in Buddha, central. Poland has a special spiritual mission, and my affinity with that kind of Poland is not accidental, the margin. I am a free individual, a spiritual being, the center. Marshal Ivan Konev represented communism. Communists are not truthful. The KGB is dangerous. Central. The USA lie. Marginal. I maintain those powerful areas organized into systems surround each person's awareness. I maintain these powerful areas organized into systems surround each person's awareness center, the aware spirit, the pure person, whatever happens to his or her body. They exist there around the person as subtle presences that block the person's direct and uninterfered with perception of the something viewed. They are there around the person, and they fall into a concentric organization depending on what appeals most the particular person, the spirit. The cognitive liberation comes with gradual realization that the particular bits and pieces are parts of the system, whereas the particular presence is the truth. For instance, the existence of God is the truth, but there can be untruths in the story told by the Roman Catholic Church. Or, Marshal Ivan Konia did play an important role in Krakow, but what I was taught at school is ideology, and what I am told now is also ideology. So I must arrive at the truth which is independent of the Russian or the American sovereignty in Poland, which is different from the official doctrine, which is real. 4. The multi-level structure of life. The word structure is used for organized thinking and does not imply any physical construction. It is obvious. But I can no longer assume the certain scope of intelligence on the part of my audience. Intelligence and ethics. So let me make it clear. A structure, as a metaphor, implies an order of the intangible. These are subtle relations. How come A controls B without any physical connections? No use of force or underhand means. How come God speaks through prophets and not the other way round? Nonetheless, life has given evidence of the existence of the very physical connections. Forceful, hostile takeovers of minds, brains, even bodies, and the routine use of underhand means. In Polish we have the saying, strike the table and the scissors will speak. It means the guilty party will reveal themselves when they hear the crime or transgression named. And so they have done. The multi-level idea of order in life, where life are particular people. Some of the individuals uniting in groups says that A can control B or not control B, and B can control C in turn or not control C, and D can be controlled by C, B, and A. All the above having a power over thee, or not. A paralyzed person can be free spiritually, suffering from the damage effected by force, but still ruling the world by the power of the Spirit, or simply still live his or her own spiritual life. For instance, he believed in God. They damaged his body by force to make him believe in Satan, but he still believes in God. Indeed, an important question surfaces. What is the actuality of this relation? The free spirit versus the overpowering, devastating, all-destructive force. Think of the individual believing in God, even though he was supposed to stop to believe in God. Even if he was supposed to stop believing in God. In the middle of the nuclear explosion. But do not turn it into an experiment. And the insanity of making all ideas actual life experience. For non-native English speakers, actual means factual, not current. 5. Each individual's life is a story. It does not mean it is a fiction understood as a lie. The metaphor implies that each of us is a hero or a heroine in his or her own life. There is some setting in which we started. There is a character from which we created. There are other characters that we meet in it. And each of them started his or her life in some setting and has been creating it from his or her character, meeting other characters in it, us, me or you, or anyone else, being one of them. Each character writes a human epos, and our interactions become the only real history of humankind there has ever been. If we assume that we stands for all human beings there have ever been, some presences are influential even after ages, whether reincarnated or not. Some remain creative and powerfully so posthumously. The metaphor puts an emphasis on the importance of the individual life. The philosophical assumption is that it is not the place and definition in the historical records that make one's life a historical or historical. We all create our fictions, and they become the epos of humankind. Six. Originally called the Einstein's error. The idea was Einstein arrived at the truth, but the equation was not neat in scientific terms. So he changed the truth into an untruth to please the system by meeting its formal requirements. I was not there to start with. But it might be that if he had changed it, indeed, he had changed it to prevent some unfortunate domino effect from coming into play, which has nothing to do with the Honestian thinking. Honesty is honest by definition. And one of the axioms is the belief in the truth as more than an aspiration that is nice to talk about, even if hard to live. The truth is good. It is the quality of God, which does not mean all truths are to be revealed to anyone, anytime. Perversion of the truth is evil. After the creation of the previous expositions, the sixth defining assumption can be rephrased simply as the ability to accept the new truth, even if it were to subvert the system. If the truth does, the system is false. One reservation. Soon I shall talk about the eighth defining assumption, which I called sfumatum. The situation where one lives with two mutually exclusive truths falls in that category. Seven. Originally called Putnam's Water, as it was inspired by a paper, I guess, of Hilary Putnam, where she mentions the idea of the possibility of water being a different substance on a different planet, different in chemical terms. Perhaps I could rephrase this defining assumption as the ability to consider an actuality essentially different from all we know. 8. The idea of sfumatum comes from my reading. It is presented in the book entitled How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, as one of the characteristics of the Da Vinci's thinking, and explained as tolerance of ambiguities, contradictory statements, the unknown, where judgment is suspended until the truth, probably of a higher order, emerges. This defining characteristic pinpoints the scientific attitude to inconvenient facts. Global education. 9. Global education. What an irony. I should be rejoicing at the world with no borders, a cosmopolitan community on the way to uniformity, especially that the inspiration comes from a left-wing educator, Ettore Gelpi. I guess we have entered the field of misconceptions. I am not certain if the new order is actualizing Ettore Gelpi's idea of global education. Certainly it is not making mine real. Indeed, I wanted each person to feel the citizen of the world, rather than be a hateful nationalist or localist. My original idea of cosmopolitanism is probably rooted in the Romantic thinking, where patriotism was strong, but the world seemed open, and travels were many. From the travels came delights and appreciation of different cultures. Attention, it starts with where patriotism was strong. I believe we can think of an analogy. the faithful Christian starts reading the holy writings of Judaism and Islam, let alone Buddhism and Hinduism, and suddenly he finds himself being called the enemy of the church. But then the faithful Christian may come up with an idea that all holy writings are redundant, and all religious institutions, as he calls them now, are redundant, and add to that, all people of religious orders are redundant. Good God, the end of the world, and not only of the Christian one. By the same rule, our patriot of yonder can arrive at the liberating, as he does call it, idea of all states being redundant, all nations being redundant, all institutions being redundant, and indeed all patriots being redundant too. There are implications. History becomes redundant. There is here and now. The Honestian global education serves a totally different purpose, and there is a totally different thinking behind it. Being the citizen of the world, the proper earthman, means appreciating the abundance of our spiritual human heritage, which speaks in cultures, where nations are cultures of the unique spirits. Secondly, the education is global in the sense of it being comprehensive. All areas are valid. There are no restricting specializations that forbid the humanist to become a scientist and an artist and what else she or he wants to master. And it starts in the kindergarten with obligatory basics. Needless to say, education in sex is not a sphere of public lessons, if any such education should ever take place. It seems to me the current world leaders got theirs from prostitutes, and now feel obliged by some trade or craftsmanship rules to pass it on to posterity. The Honestian global education includes global values, one of them being the right to intimacy. No place for the perverted. No place for the perverted fear. No virginophobia. No scare of innocence. No place for those violating the rule either. This is freedom. 10. The Copernican thinking. Perhaps it needs rephrasing too. Recognition. This is what it boils down to. If one starts the holy quest in the hope of arriving at the truth, once one arrives there, the truth ought to be recognized as the truth. And this is a well-grounded, fair ambition. 11. The Promethean thinking. The idea that surfaces in my mind is that of knowledge being a gift to humankind. Somewhere in the background, there is an aspiration of the end of the Promethean suffering. Why should he suffer and suffer? I guess none of my postulates has undergone a comparable attack directed by enemies to humankind obviously. People of low ethics, and particularly evil characters, additionally retarded, insane, have been given access to the knowledge that can kill people of goodwill, moral, top ethics, bright and brilliant. I believe it requires no comment, but the mention of it having happened is all important. 13. Counteracting indoctrination. Indoctrination is the very opposite of what the Honestian education and earlier pursuit of knowledge, the quest for the truth, create. The 13th defining assumption takes us back to the first one, the glasses. All indoctrination is bad. Some is evil, some deadly. I do not know how one achieves the cognitive freedom yet, but I know where I am going, and this certainly is not the road to God. Truth is the domain of God. 14. Individuality. Wherever you have a departure from the freedom, a suppression of individual life, a perversion of it, you will find enemies to humankind. It is not to be confused with selfishness or egocentrism. It is about it is about the spiritual being's freedom to live life. No one else can live the life for her or for him. Each person is unique. People may unite, but they remain full in their humanity only as individuals. God created a man and a woman. "15. Ethics. The fact that I did not mention it in my first description of the paradigm is revealing. It was obvious. A rude awakening reads, it is not. Welcome the revolution." End of part 1. Agnieszka Justitia, the first of Honestian, the noble queen, the guardianess of truth and justice, the protectress of the pure value. The 13th of March 2020. Thank you for your attention.